Hey everybody, this is Lord Vader. He is going to be co-hosting this episode of Mr. D's Movie Club with me. Lord Vader, it's an appropriate name for today's topic. But I do want to send a special shout out to St. Michael's Catholic Academy community. I miss you guys. I miss my students so much. I miss just walking around campus. I also want to do a shout out to my alma mater, St. Pius X, who's also been participating in the movie club. And I know some of my other high school teacher friends from other communities have been sharing them as well. So Vader and I want to say thank you, don't we? And we will hope that everybody's safe. And now, on to the movie club. Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition, our third edition of Mr. D's Movie Club. And, you know, usually we look at two different movies, and this time we're not going to do that. This time we're going to look at 5 1/8 movies. So we're looking at a little bit longer of some self-isolation, some social distancing. Beyond that, we are getting into May, which means very, very close to May the 4th. And like everyone who is a Star Wars fan, when I'm faced with an opportunity to watch all the movies, I pretty much watch all the movies. And I do realize, as painful as it is, that I'm entering an age in which a lot of the people that I interact with haven't seen any of them. And so I thought that, first of all, I would send this special episode out to Mrs. Bannon, one of our fellow teachers at St. Michael's, who's never seen any of them, and implore her to maybe take this challenge for me. So those of you who are my age, who have kids, know that in some degree, maybe your kids haven't seen Star Wars. Or you start to ask yourself, how do I watch Star Wars in a world in which there are now 11 Star Wars films, all tangentially connected, in a situation in which they've come out all out of order? So how does one kind of approach watching Star Wars? And I'm going to focus on the first two trilogies. And I'll be full disclosure, a lot of what I'm doing, while the explanation's a little bit maybe different, I didn't come up with this order, the order that I've settled on. It is adapted from a famous internet blogger that goes by Machete. It's called the Machete Cut. But I'm going to kind of explain why it works this way, and hope that those of you who have never seen Star Wars and are going to finally dive into what is the most important cinematic franchise ever might consider watching it in this way. And it is an experiment that I worked on with one of my producers when we were making independent films. She'd never seen them, and we convinced her to hang out with us for a whole weekend and watch them in this order and then ask her questions. And so what we're going to be dealing with really are the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy in one other film. And for those of you who don't know, Star Wars A New Hope was released in 1977 simply as Star Wars. And then somewhere after The Empire Strikes and The Empire Strikes Back had come out, a lot of people started to notice there was an episode number all of a sudden popped up. And it was episode 4. And all of a sudden, all that existed was episodes 4, 5, and 6. Nothing about 1, 2, and 3. And then 1, 2, and 3 come out. And this is not an attempt to trash the prequel trilogy, but simply a way to maybe deal with it. So the first thing I want you to do at home, those of you who have physical media, is I want you to pull out the following discs. I want you to pull out episodes 1, 2, and 3, episodes 4, 5, and 6, and Rogue One. And I want you to take episode 1 out of your disc holder, walk to your front porch, and fling it as far as it can, as far as you can throw it. Watch that beautiful disc skip into and away from your house, ricochet off the sidewalk, hopefully damaging it so that no one ever has to watch that movie in your household again. So a little bit about the prequels. Now, in some ways, they were a problematic endeavor from the start. Sometimes what we imagine is better than what we see. And when we were all kids, we saw this guy with his helmet off for the first time in the middle of Empire Strikes Back, episode 5. And we took with that the information that we get from A New Hope, things like, he's more machine now, like the quote I did earlier. And we get this imagery of him slowly but surely transforming to Darth Vader over years of battle and combat. So the minute that someone says we're going to make a film based on him becoming Vader, already you're taking everybody's collective imagination and narrowing it down to one vision. And obviously his vision is the most important one, but it does, as a viewer, as someone who experiences the movies, kind of takes a little bit away from it.
Your skills are complete.
I know, I'm pretty good at this. So, if my skills are complete, I guess I should go ahead and talk about why we get rid of 1 and not 2. Now, a lot of people will say that 2 is actually a worse film than Episode 1. I think they're both bad, or not great. And so to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to argue it. Gary C. Warren's a filmmaker and reality show producer out of LA who I love. One of my very good friends, but he's wrong on this instance. But to me, what matters is the narrative flow. And none of the storylines that are introduced in Episode 1, or most of them, don't carry through to the future films. Characters are introduced and die, and so therefore they don't impact Episodes 2 or 3. And therefore, they don't really add to the cohesive narrative. And some of the stuff that does carry through is just kind of weird. Anakin and Padme, who we know from the beginning are destined to be together, Anakin meets her when he's like 9. And so it just comes off odd. And so to me, it's one thing that you could easily excise and it doesn't really matter.
Join me and together we can rule the galaxy.
I have a job. But I appreciate the offer. I mean, I get good benefits. I have really good bosses. So, yeah, I don't think I'm interested.
You have learned much, young one.
Well, I'm not really young. Although like they say, it's not really the years, it's the mileage. And now here's what we're going to do. So we're actually going to basically have to change the way we look at Star Wars versus how Lucas looked at Star Wars. And so we're going to look at it as Luke's story, not as Anakin's story. And, obviously Lucas has the right approach. It's his movie. It's his thing. He can do what he wants to. But just for the academic purposes of storytelling, we're going to look at this as a journey. It's the hero's journey for Luke Skywalker. And so one of the things that's always bugged me was, and this has everything to do with budget and everything to do with age of actors, but we never really see Darth Vader be the terrifying being that all the Rebel Alliance is expecting at the beginning of Episode 4. When the blockade runner gets boarded and everybody's terrified about this black figure coming through with the big breathing and then just the stuff, this guy, we're never really terrified of him. So what I want you to do is begin your marathon by showing the last 3 or 4 minutes of Rogue One. When Vader shows up and basically takes out all those rebel soldiers, it is the moment that we had all wanted to see from the very first time we watched Star Wars. And it really earns the terror that the universe already feels for this person. Well, he's more a machine now, twisted and evil. So then we're going to go right into Episode 4. And Episode 4, it really does a nice seamless transition from Rogue One into Episode 4. So we're going to go right into Episode 4, A New Hope. And then we're going to go right into Empire Strikes Back. And this is where things get weird. So a couple of things happen in Empire Strikes Back, and I'm going to be as vague and spoiler-free as possible. Star Wars is really about the mystery of 2 things. One, the mystery of Luke's parentage and Luke's sibling. And Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, ends on 2 cliffhangers. The revelation of Luke's parentage and the capturing of Han Solo into carbonite. Now, if you watch the movie straight through and you go right into Episode 6, Han is stuck in carbonite for all of about 7 minutes of screen time or something like that. It's very dramatic. Now, it wasn't when it came out, there was 3 years of distance, but now it just sort of, he's there and he's gone. But we're left hanging with the issue of Luke's parentage. So what we're going to do at the end of Episode 5 is we're now going to jump into Episode 2 and Episode 3. And we're going to go right into those movies and we're going to treat them like a flashback to reveal how the two stories of Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker dovetail. The reveal, because if you watch 1 through 3, the impact at the end of 5 has no more impact because you already know it's coming. One of the things that episode 3 does better than episode 6, though, is the reveal of Luke's sibling. When we learn who Luke's sibling is in 6, it almost happens off camera. There's zero drama to it. For as much drama as occurred with the famous battle in Cloud City, there's almost no drama to the reveal of the sibling. In episode 3, though, when we see Luke born and we learn who the sibling is, there's a real moment there. And it actually works better. So then we're going to go right from episode 3, where we've basically seen this flashback and we've now learned how the lives fall apart. Then we're going to go right into episode 6 and finish it up with Return of the Jedi. And then if you want to, go to 7, 8, and 9. One of the things about the prequels, there's this big debate now, prequel trilogy versus sequel trilogy. And I think both of them are problematic. First of all, I think all Star Wars is good Star Wars. Both of them are a little problematic. I do think that the sequel trilogy is better than the prequel trilogy. I think it is interesting that if you take all the Lucasfilm Star Wars movies, and therefore including Solo, which is vastly underrated, and Rogue One, which is appropriately highly rated, more good Star Wars was made without Lucas directing than with Lucas directing. I will speak to the prequels a little bit because I think sometimes they're unfairly bashed because it's like trendy to do. The biggest issue that I have with the prequel trilogy isn't the CGI sets, and it isn't necessarily the goofy characters that some of that's audience expectation. I'm a guy in my 40s, so I expected Lucas to make a movie for me. Instead, he made a movie for my kid. So, okay, fine. And Lucas hasn't always been the strongest writer or the strongest director anyway. One of the things that I didn't like about the prequels, and the thing that I think bugs me the most, is it is as if it's as if he didn't watch his original movies before he decided to make the prequel trilogy. So you have lines of dialogue that straight up they don't connect at all. They are essentially violating his own story. Obi-Wan, when he first meets R2-D2 in A New Hope, I don't recall ever owning a droid. Cut to the prequels and him and R2 are running all over the galaxy. It's not only did you own a droid, but you had that droid. That very same exact one. Little things like I try to train Vader like Yoda trained me, and then we find out that Qui-Gon Jinn trained him. So part of the reason why we get rid of episode 1 is, unfortunately, it does remove Qui-Gon Jinn, which is the only good character, I think, original to the prequel trilogies. And it does get rid of Darth Maul, which is, one of the best lightsaber fights in Star Wars. But really the reason why you need to watch him in the end of this order: the last few minutes of Rogue One, episode 4, episode 5, episode 2, episode 3, and then episode 6, and then 7, 8, 9, should you choose, you lose the majority of Jar Jar Binks, and that's a world I think we can all agree is a better world.